Okay, they'll come on with this in a minute. Good afternoon. Okay, all right, now we can be heard. Thank you. Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone today. If you please take a seat. I would like to call this meeting officially to order. Would you please join me then for the Pledge of Allegiance? Okay, thank you. We'll start now with establishing our quorum, which we have a full house. And then we'll move to under item 1D, report from closed session with Mr. Carmel.
Thank you, President Robinette. The board did meet in closed session to discuss labor negotiations. However, there is no action to report.
Thank you very much. And then for this special meeting today, we have public comment, and it is, of course, only on any item that is described in this notice, and of course, it's a standard of 3 minutes. And we do have 2 requests, but they're on 3A, so I'm sorry, I'm going to call them by item, since they're going to go by item, so excuse me on that. So we have one right now for 3A and one for 3B. So we will move then into item 3, and we'll move into A. Is that right? Okay, yeah, because they're each connected to items. So we're good. Okay, here we go. All right, settling in. First, under regular business, item 3A, I'm going to have the general manager introduce that item, please.
Thank you, Madam President and board members. Item 3A is discussion and consideration of additional cost-saving measures for the CCSD and receive a financial update related to revised cash flow projections and anticipated expenditures. I went ahead and put this first on the agenda. I thought it would be important instead of putting it second or third because it's going to provide you some ideas for additional cost savings. I'll just go through them, but it'll also allow Patrick, the finance manager, to bring you up to date on the projections for revenues and expenditures through, I think through November. He has it actually a little bit farther out than that. And just because I put some of these things down, I don't want everybody freaking out and thinking we're going to move up to the fire department and sell our property and all that stuff. The board asked me to come back this month from the August meeting and come up with some additional cost savings ideas. So what I'll do is I'll read through these and then maybe I can get some feedback from the board, and then Patrick can do his presentation. But I just came up with some different ideas. One thing I would like to say though is we can tell by some of the cost saving measures that we implemented earlier on that they're obviously working. The deficits that we projected are significantly less than we thought they would be. But we're a long way from out of the woods right now. So if it's okay with Madam President, the board, I'll go over these and read these. And so the first one, and I think we can all agree on this, is secure the $4.3 million as part of Proposition 84 grant funding. I put this as the single most important issue facing the district right now. There's 2 parts of that. There is the indemnification agreement that's being required by the county because of the Land Watch lawsuit. And then there's the groundwater management plan, which we've revised and will be bringing forward to the board in the near future. So we need to get that $4.3 million. That's the bottom line, and we'll be in a lot better position. Discuss and consider implementation of revised water and wastewater rates adjustments that would allow for cost recovery of the actual cost of service provided for both departments. We have an ad hoc committee together, Director Rice and Director Berenger. And there is a public meeting regarding rate increases or the rate study, and that's September 15th here at 5:30 to 7, right? Followed by line dancing. So So 5:30 to 7, if you want to come and give some input on the rate study. So we're moving forward with that. Number 3, that's obvious, resolve the Land Watch litigation lawsuit. That's costing everybody out there money every day. So it continues to grow. So we'll hopefully have a resolution to that soon. Considering moving the administrative offices to the fire department, although adjustments and improvements would have to be made, ultimately the district would save significantly on their monthly rent. Currently, the district pays about $3,600 per month and has rented the facility since 2001. So if there's any realtors in the audience, you can see how much we've given in rent over the last 14 years. So combining both administrative and fire could result in improved customer service as well as an established government center for the community. It's just a thought. Thought I'd throw it out there. It's something to be discussed. Evaluate the land adjacent to the fire department and determine the best use for the long-term perspective. Renting this property to the Cambria Healthcare District for portable units could be one of many options and could increase revenue for the district. So there's a large lot next to the fire department that's really not being utilized to its maximum potential right now. Evaluate the inventory of current CCSD property holdings and determine if there's any properties that could be liquidated. Government agencies do this all the time. We're not talking about the park or the ranch or anything like that. We're talking about properties that we have. I think we need to do an inventory of those properties, determine how they're zoned, and as part of a later discussion, determine if we want to liquidate some of those properties for cash. Eliminate future enrollment of reserve firefighters into PERS retirement system. Return to the previous practice of tracking the annual hours worked and restrict hours to less than 960 hours. That's the trigger point. Continue to evaluate on a short and long-term basis the most economically feasible and most efficient methodology of providing fire suppression and paramedic services for the community of Cambria. This would include staffing levels, level of overall service provided, current and future unfunded liability relating to PERS, vehicle equipment. It is important to note that as we evaluate future fire suppression paramedic services for the community, the district's $8.9 million loan with Western Alliance stipulates that the funds are not available through the EWS charges and water sale revenues to pay the loan. Ad valorem revenue or property taxes will be used to pay the loan. The majority of the fire department's budgets come from this funding mechanism. I brought this up because we have an ad hoc committee on this too, and they're looking in evaluating this. Just clarification on the Western Alliance loan. If you look at the terms of the agreement, the first source of revenue to pay our loan is through EWS charges. The second component, or the fallback component, is water rates. And then the third component, that if those are insufficient, it comes from the ad valorem, as I was talking about, or property taxes. Let me see where I left off. Okay, number 9, evaluate and implement the PG&E large integrated audit. Although the report is in a draft form, a great deal of effort has been put into this, and significant cost savings relating to energy could be achieved by the district if partially or fully implemented. So staff's been working with the county. County's done a great job. They've inventoried all of our assets, all of our pumps, all of our motors, and we have a lot of them. And there's recommendations in that draft report. We'll be meeting with them on the 17th. And for a long term, there can be significant savings there. Meet with the Regional Water Quality Control Board regarding sampling of the EWS. After a further evaluation of the permit and sample results, it was determined that a great deal of redundancy in sampling was occurring. The Regional Water Quality Control Board is drafting a letter to the district outlining specific areas where sampling can be reduced, thereby saving the district money. So we've already implemented that. After the EWS has been operational for a 1-year period, the district can request to the State Water Resources Control Board a further reduction in sampling based on empirical data. That's encouraging to know. You know, when we started this system up, they required a great deal of testing, and rightfully so. But after you get a good baseline and you get good information and good data, you can go back to them and say, okay, the results are good. Can you reduce those sampling? And that would save us a significant amount of money. Reduce or eliminate AGP video. I don't know if they're here, you know. Yeah, see, I know that would come in. Currently, we pay for 3 hours of video. Historically, board meetings last 4 to 5 hours, but not this one. The board could also request a survey of all other special districts to determine which ones record their meetings. Reduce part-time, and this is, we've already done this, reduce the part-time administrative staff from 16 hours per week to 8 hours a week. The board could consider reducing office hours that currently exist Monday through Friday from 9 to 4. We could go back to the other hours that we used to do prior to me coming on board as general manager, which was 10 to 3. You probably ask yourself how that could save money. Well, the modification would allow staff to get more work done, but would also impact the district's level of customer service. We've reduced the public information officer from $3,000 a month to $1,000 per month. We negotiated reduced Bartle Wells Associates professional services agreement from $40,000 to $26,500, a savings of $13,500. I'd like to thank Director Rice and Director Berenger on this. Staff continues to monitor expenditures and revenues daily. The general manager and finance manager continue to communicate with all department managers and fiscally prudent, and the only items that deemed emergency by the general manager will be authorized. I'd like to thank everyone for their efforts. So Patrick has a 7-month cash flow projection dated 9/2/15, and that's attached. It includes March 2016 because the data through February could not reflect the low cash projections for March. So if it would be okay with the board president, maybe Patrick could go into that, and then you could come back and maybe give us some direction on some of these cost reduction measures. But some of them, many of them, several of them have been implemented, but the other ones are just long-term discussions that we can have at some other point in time. I just wanted to kind of throw everything out there and see what, but you can see there's an opportunity here for some cost savings. And
Okay, thank you for that report. And let's then continue on with our budget manager.
Yeah, Madam President, members of the board, members of the public, can I have that PowerPoint now? I have a revised cash flow projection. It's going to be real hard to see. But at the last board meeting, I gave a projection that was basically $800,000 worse than this one. I've done some revisions. I just started. There were things that I was not aware of, things I hadn't thought about at the time. But basically now we're thinking, the projection is that at the end of November, right down here, we should be about even on cash flow if things go as we're projecting. We're hoping, we're including $75,000 each month for maintenance and $75,000 each month for operations, which is substantially below what we have budgeted. But because of the general manager's austerity program, people are actually spending less. So if we spend less than $75,000 a month in maintenance and $75,000 a month in operations, we should be able to not actually run out of cash in November. That's the hope. There's no guarantee. Things come up all the time. But right now, we're projecting it will be just about even at the end of November. The staff report outlines the issues that caused the last cash flow projection to be off so much. I'm not going to go through that. I don't think that's important here. What is important is that I think we now, with this cash flow projection, have a fairly accurate assessment of what's going to occur over the next 7 months. I went out 7 months because if you just look through the end of February, we're projecting we're going to have $500,000 worth of cash in the bank. But then there are some substantial expenditures in March with no income in March, and that's going to bring us back down to not having much cash at the end of March. I'm happy to answer any questions the board might have.
Thank you. So what we want to do, I think, at this point with the board is have a discussion on this. But I think before we do that, I'd like to hear from public comment at this time. And so I think we'll start now with public comment. So first up is Jerry Wood on 3A.
Correct. Thank you, Madam President and Board. I have concerns about a number of the options that General Manager Gruber talked about, but I'm going to specifically reference number 4. Although the development of a government center is a fine concept, the proposal of relocating the CCSD offices of the fire department is not feasible. Because of the short notice, I was unable to get information on floor areas for each one of these operations that's currently in effect. But with my background in code compliance, a little over 20 years of plan review, building code information, I would say there is not adequate floor area in the fire department to house both operations. The codes require that there's a minimum of 100 square feet per person, and also areas for files, storage, machines, et cetera. Again, I'm not aware of the total number of CCSD employees, so I don't know what that rate would be. The big problem that I can see is the housing, the using of the fire department. The large room in the fire department is a multi-use room. It's used for training, meetings, planning of emergency operations and such, either man-made or natural. This room is also the area's emergency operations center. It can be activated at any time, day or night, 24/7. There are phone lines installed for emergency operation. We have a ham radio base station for contact with other emergency command functions and Cambria CERT. This area could not be easily converted in a rapid manner to go into an emergency operations center if there were office type use in there. The bay, the engineer's bays, house the 2 engines, water tender, equipment for refilling the BAs for the firefighters. So that is not a real good option either. 3 ideas for a difference: renegotiate with the current building owner for the rent, because if they lose another tenant, his income is going to go down. There's also the old Cambria Library, and also the old Heritage Oaks Bank, which may be a smaller floor area and make the rent more feasible. And if we did any of those, the relocation costs may be less also. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, on 3A, Julie Tacker.
Good afternoon. I am Julie Tacker, and I was here a month
Monique.
ago. I'm sorry?
Pardon me.
Again, I'm Julie Tacker. I was here last month when the cash flow projection was presented, and the concerns I had at that time are not allayed at all, and my recommendation to you at that time stands, in that you need a bankruptcy consultant. $4.3 million will not save you. It will not save you. Mr. Greshams explained to you that should that grant be awarded, it would come in very slowly as each invoice would be approved. It's not going to save you. When I was driving in, I was thinking about analogies, and I hate analogies, but at the same time, they're sometimes the only way to get the picture. And the analogy I landed on was the Titanic. Shiny, pretty, beautiful, wonderful, idealistic. That's your EWS. The iceberg, only a fraction of it shows above the water. That's your financial future. It's still coming. The danger is still upon you. The number one cost-cutting measure I think you need to make, it's a hard one, but you need to let your captain go. He has led you down a very dangerous path. And the most dangerous of the paths is highlighted in number 8. You mortgaged your community's future and its safety with the ad valorem property tax. This red shirt debate is a red herring. It's not CDF versus CFD. It's will we have funding to fund any emergency services? You put your community's safety on the line for that loan, and then you exceeded the cost of the project. You don't have the voters' approval for that. And that grant may just get you out of that hot water, but you still have to make the nut. Get an expert on finances. Get a bankruptcy attorney. I have lived this nightmare. Our CSD, when I was on it, filed the first Chapter 9 of a government entity, of a CSD. It was painful. It was expensive. But if you don't protect your assets, you're not protecting your ass.
Thank you. I am going to ask that in order to encourage everyone to feel comfortable to speak, that we hold our applause. Please do share your support and appreciation to the individual after the meeting. But I think it's not fair because we're not doing that for each person, so I'd rather have everyone feel the same welcome. Okay, next we have on 3A, Crosby Swartz.
Madam President, members of the board and staff. I have a specific comment on item 12 under the proposed cost saving. It stood out to me as being a really bad idea. A lot of members of the community are unable to attend the meeting during the day, and the only way they can participate in what's going on is by watching the video later. The minutes aren't available immediately, and not everything that is said at the meetings is recorded in the minutes. Generally, the public comments are not recorded in the minutes. So for the small cost savings that might be obtained here, I would recommend that you keep the AGP video and keep the community involved in what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next on 3A, Tina Dickinson.
Tina Dickinson, Cambria. One of the naysayers, one of the troublemakers that we've been called. And here we find ourselves today, as I've predicted for a long time, in one hell of a mess. And General Manager, on your 17 points of how cost-cutting measures, I take issue with the first one. The very first issue you know you have to address is the groundwater management plan, because without it, you won't get a dime from the Prop 84 funding. And the other, and in regards to that, why have we not had a public hearing? Here are the procedures, guidance for adopting a groundwater management plan. What you're looking at is a 1980 basin plan for Sensimine. You're going to amend that from what I understand. But in this, there's supposed to be a public hearing at the beginning of the process. The landowners with water rights are supposed to be notified. That has not happened. And then there's supposed to be a hearing at the end of that process. None of that's happened. I would take issue, I'd like to know exactly how you intend to resolve the land watch litigation. Tell me, how are you going to just resolve it? I think they offered you a settlement agreement, you just forget it. Okay, so then moving on, for number 8, that was covered by someone else. I won't go into that. I would like to know why Mr. Flores' contract has not been canceled. He hasn't gotten us the 4.3 million. He hasn't gotten you the regular CDP. Why are we paying close to 10,000 or more a month for him? Why do we need a PIO even now at 1,000 a month? I have so many issues regarding the mess that you all have brought us to. We warned you, the regulatory agencies warned you in their July 22nd ISMND. We did a Prop 218 and we were called the naysayers. We don't want water. We are not out of water after 2 years. We are not in an emergency. We have not been in an emergency. The well levels are fine. And when you go to flip on that switch, good luck paying not only labor, but the PG&E bill for it. Because I'm not going to pay it. I will protest the next rate increase if that's what you intend to do. If you turn the switch on when those well levels are just fine, I will start a Prop 218 on the next rate increase because people are furious.
Thank you. Dr. Bettenhausen?
Thank you very much, Madam President. I'm Elizabeth Bettenhausen, learning how to work these lights slowly in my advancing years. I'm not going to lay it on really heavily. I'm going to point out a few things about the General Manager's report to you for your deliberation. There are 17 items there, and in only 3 of them, in terms of savings, are there actual numbers. All the rest is speculative. Now, perhaps the speculation is to enable you to have an open-ended discussion about the policy questions before you, because they are major. But you cannot make policy without having some intimation of whether you are going to save a nickel or a dime. You do know that you're going to save or have already saved $37,500 by those 2 actions with Bartle and Wells and the Public Information Officer. But you have no information about what you could save doing some of the other stuff. If I were told I can save a lot of money by going to Cookie Crock instead of Albertsons, I'd want to know what's the difference between the price of Cheerios at Cookie Crock and Albertsons? What do I pay for gasoline and car wear to get down to Morro Bay, etc.? But my Cheerios is a piddly issue compared to what is before you. And if you deliberate today, directors, I want to hear the concrete, factual information that enables you to make wise judgments about MONEY. I want transparency. I've said it 9,362 times within the last 14 months. I still want it. I want the video people. I like them. But many people in town know about you only that way. But I want transparency on the ground management plan. I've asked dear Monique, I have asked dear Jerry, I have asked dear Tom, and I have asked dear you and Gressons, and nobody has given it to me. But I'm assured that only 4.3 million depends upon it, and they're working on it, and it's going to be, as the general manager said, in the near future on your agenda. Friends, do not put up with being treated as less intelligent than you are, less able to understand facts and money than you are, and less dedicated to public service for this community than you actually are. Please get your boots on and do the work after you get the numbers.
Thank you. Okay. We have one other on 3A, Jerry Farrell.
Madam President and Board, my questions are number 4, of course, because I can't even begin to speak as well as the 3 before me did on money. I won't even go there. My concern on 4 is that if you move administration into the fire building, is Cambria Fire just going to go by the wayside and you just maintain the fire department with CAL FIRE? Second question, number 6, evaluating the inventory. Does that mean the retired lots would come on the market that have been retired for a reason? That's all.
Thank you. Okay, no further public comment then on item 3A. So we will open for board discussion. Vice President Cliff?
Yeah, a couple of points for questions. One of them is on item 8, and in it you talk about staffing levels. What I would be concerned with is that later today we're going to be talking about the SAFER grant. And it's my understanding that the SAFER grant, in a way, protects staffing levels. I kept reading through it, and I couldn't find the exact wordage, but somewhere along in my background history is that the SAFER grant is to increase staff, and that it can't be used to replace staff. Probably, if we approve the SAFER grant, probably this staffing level thing is set, and we probably have to take that off the table. And that's a decision that we may have to take into account when you think about the SAFER grant, as to, because once you commit on the SAFER grant, you are in effect committing to staffing levels. So if at a later time you found yourself in a position that financially you can't support the same level of staffing, you may find yourself in a position of having to refund monies that you don't have and things like that. So I want to make sure that that was clear, and I'm getting some nodding of heads, so I guess that's the case. Considering the administrative office move to the fire department, part of the administrative office doesn't necessarily deal with the public on a everyday basis. Could there be a situation where part of the administrative office that could provide additional services to the fire department, such as a full-time clerk and those kinds of things, administrative technicians, and some basics that would deal with the public go to the fire department, and others go to locations both where the water and the sewer, so that those services that aren't directly related to the public could be moved to the other locations. That's a question I have. Beyond that, I can discuss things later on.
Okay. Any further discussion? Director Rice?
Thank you, President Robinette. First thing is this a short-term financial situation that's going to be solved when we get the grant money, or are we in a long-term bad news situation that even having a rate study that would adjust rates, so if rates were adjusted to actually cover the costs of water and wastewater departments, and we get the $4.3 million grant, we're still going to be in a bad situation?
No, not at all, and I think staff's done a good job the last couple reports indicating that that's not the case. If you look in the report that Patrick provided you today, there's an outstanding invoice of $1.2 roughly million that we owe CDM Smith. Patrick and I estimate that once we pay everybody off and everything, we'll have between $2 and $2.5 million back in reserve. So No, we won't. We'll be in good shape. I know that's what some people don't want to hear, that because that's optimistic and that's good news. But let me finish. Let me finish. You asked me a question. I'm going to tell you. So, no, I mean it's not, and it's going to continue to get better. The situation for the district will continue to get better financially.
Please, let's listen. Thank you.
I'm encouraged, actually, and I know. Well, I'll say this: I'm encouraged that we brought back within a 30-day period of time a deficit that was significantly reduced, and I want to applaud staff and the department managers for coming up with some short-term and long-term solutions to some of our problems. So the $4.3 million, if you look at what we owe CDM, if we can resolve the litigation and that does not continue to bleed the district, then we'll be in a pretty good financial situation. We'll have what we currently almost had in reserves prior to this project. And then when the rates get in place, just a quick comment on the rates. The rates are needed. The rates have been needed. We've been for many years spending money from general funds to support the water and wastewater departments. The reason we've been doing that is because of infrastructure needs. So those rates that are being proposed that need to be adjusted irregardless of the information we're providing you today. So.
Okay, thank you for those responses, and I'd like to suggest that because of that we don't need to consider moving the office, because there is a cost to move anything out of where it currently is, even if we just move people. And my understanding is that Firehouse is already inadequate for what we already need to have for the fire department. I could be wrong, but that was my understanding, and it seems like that is, if we were going to be in a long-term situation, let's talk about moving. Let's talk about moving to a different building, but that ends up being a bigger cost to move than it would save the rent. I would also suggest, as several people already have, that getting rid of AGP is not even a question, especially at a time when we need to be even more transparent because of all of the concerns that folks have in town related to a lot of different things that this district does for the community.
Just really quick on I put this down just as and I think it's something that we need to, if we don't look at it now, we need to look at it later on in time. I don't think it's in our best interest when we do become, get back on good financial footing. It's in our best interest or the community's best interest to continue to pay $3,600 a month. So for rent, which we have over the last 14 years, the community could have had a facility. The fire department, Jerry Wood brings up a good point. That is an EOC, but that doesn't mean that facility at some point in time later on could not be expanded when the revenues and the monies are available for a plethora of reasons. Just to be able to have one consolidated, and it happens all over in special districts and cities. So if it's something we don't, obviously can't look at now, and I've heard some good input, and the board's provided me some direction, I think it is something we need to look at later on down the road. Because currently, if somebody, for an example, goes to the fire department, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys, and wants to inquire about something, the door is locked, and the door should be open, and there should be a customer service person there being able to answer questions. If you were able to expand that facility, you could also have rooms for county folks to come up here. So all of our folks wouldn't have to drive down to the county and submit applications for tree removal and things like that. You could have a sheriff's facility in there. So if it's something that's obviously we can't afford to do right now, I think it's something in the future that we need to be able to look at. Because again, the $3,600 that we're paying on rent is a lot of money.
And I don't disagree with that, and I think that is a longer term, based on the answer that you gave to the first question about how long term were we looking at. That's not part of the conversation we need to be having right now. Those are long-term strategic things that the board needs to be looking at, but not right this minute. It seems to me what's missing on this list is the thing that's where we're really hemorrhaging money, and that's not the land watch litigation. It's the emergency water supply treatment plant, because there's a lot more testing than we thought there was going to be. There's a lot more expenses there. We've expanded because the board voted, including me, to have a full EIR. We have to be pursuing the regular coastal development permit, which is critical to us being able to continue to use that in emergencies. But I also see that we haven't run out of water. I don't know where we are, because I still haven't gotten responses on how close we are to not being able to use either aquifer. And if what's happening is we're running out of money and we don't have money before the grant, pouring more money into a system we're not using is troubling to me. And we can't be blaming it on litigation or we're not combining our fire department and our admin departments. It's one of those things, I don't even know if we could pause any of the stuff that we're spending money on. It seems to me maybe we need to be talking to Balanced Public Relations about whether or not we continue with, that's $9,000 right there. That'll stop that $43 out of money in November right there. You know? So I think there's some other, if we're looking at not the overall, how do we make sure the district is efficiently spending the money that we get from the community, whether it's through water and wastewater rates or through property taxes. I think it's critical right now that we look at what are the things that are going out on a monthly, regular basis. The rates study is going to be designed to make sure that what we have is efficiencies. The budget process is designed to make sure that we look at efficiencies and how we use the money that we have. This, right now, seems to me the conversation is about, do we need to go back to ramen? Do we need to ask our employees to maybe take a month off? I mean, I don't know that, but we're looking at immediate issues right now because we don't have money in the wallet to pay right now. So do we talk to Dean Flores and say, hey, can we skip this month? Can we talk to CAL FIRE and ask them if we can pay the 90 grand in December after we get the receipt of the property taxes instead of in November before we get it? I mean, there's things like that it seems like when you're dealing with a budget, I know a home budget is not the same as a government budget, but when you're dealing with running out of money, you do what you can, and I know that you've already done a lot of things like working with Bartle Wells, talking and reducing the public information officer monthly, but it seems to me there might be other things that we might be able to talk to folks about. Hey, do you mind if because we are going to be back in a flush situation, not like we're going to be rolling in dough, because I don't think we ever have been, whatever it looks like. But it seems to me that the longer-term issues here are part of something that is not the discussion for today. Okay. I had just one other thing, and I cannot find it right now.
Okay, Madam President, just really quick, if I could answer. So when we say we have plenty of water, that's not the case. The use of our Santa Rosa wells, because of our permit requirements, are directly proportional to the level in the WBE well. And so the WBE well, once it reaches 3 feet, we can no longer use the SR3 well and the SR4. So to say, well, yeah, we have 42 feet in those wells are not available once the WBE well reaches 3 feet. And people know that. I mean, we've had this conversation repeatedly for the last couple of years. Second of all, so that leaves us with the San Simeon well field. We know that we do not want to go negative gradient on that. I mean, for a plethora of reasons. And so when we do reach negative gradient, we will have about 8 feet, 10 feet, based on empirical data that we've plotted over the years, left in those well fields. You do not want to bring it any lower than that. We brought it really low, and the result of that was the building of this facility and the need for this facility. If you recall, we went negative gradient, we went down to 2 or 3 feet, and this board was courageous enough to build the EWS. Now, the $8.9 million, and we did a design build, and we built an emergency water facility And the interesting variable in this, and I'm just trying to explain as the best I can, because you're absolutely right, Director Rice, there's significant cost overrides. But once we signed the $8.9 million and we signed the contract with CDM to build this facility, if you recall from a time perspective, then came the Title 22 and Title 27 permits. You know, we can always look back and we can second guess and we can say we should have, would have, should have, whatever. But the requirements within that Title 27 and Title 22 permits are very expensive. Just the impoundment alone is $54,000. So, and then we realized that there were some additional environmental concerns, and we've addressed those. AGB video, I agree with you. I put it down there, but this meeting is going to cost us $800. So I know people, you know. So we'll you know, EWS design built the water levels. So we've touched on that. But no community wants to exhaust their water supply down to dangerously low levels. So Santa Rosa is off the table. Once we hit 3 feet, it's off the table. Plain and simple, by permit requirement. So now we leaves us with Santa Rosa, which is at about, I think about 12 right now. The San Simeon, which will go down rather quickly. We'll reach negative gradient. And we plan on turning the EWS on the 15th of September. It's doing exactly what we built it for to do, to protect the community from running out of water. So as far as the cost associated with the EWS and the operational component, there's two variables. The first variable is that we did not know what the requirements of the Title 22 and Title 27 permit would be. And so we're working with the regulatory agencies on reducing those requirements. And second, the cost estimates that we plugged into the cost of running that facility were provided by CDM Smith, and it was data based on operational cost of similar facilities. But as we know, this is a very environmentally sensitive area, and because of additional costs associated with that, that was not necessarily included in the cost to run the facility. So I hope I answered you. You bring up some very good points, Director Rice, you really do. I'm not trying to defend why we did it, why we built the.
I don't want to make you feel defensive.
Oh no,
I
don't want to. You know, so you bring up some very good points. I think it's a good dialogue to have. I really do. I'm kind of beyond. You know, we're going to run it. You know, I'm glad we're going to run it, and I'm glad it's here for the community. So.
Director Rice?
So. And I don't want to run out of water either. And my concern is not how much water we have, but more, can we meet our demand? Which is low right now because people are being very cooperative in reducing their water use. So I'm not as much, I mean, obviously I'm concerned about the well levels, but my greater concern is whether or not those well levels will meet the demand that we get. The question I had that I couldn't think of that is actually kind of one of the most important ones. Isn't the fixed charge that's on our bills for the EWS supposed to be enough to cover the entire loan payment, and therefore we shouldn't need to worry whether or not, because that's a fixed charge and we are not changing the number of accounts, and so shouldn't that essentially be a wash, or am I incorrect?
Can I answer? There's two components that are dedicated to paying off the loan: the fixed charge, EWS charge each month, and the EWS usage charge each month. There's two components. So it depends not just on the base charge, but on how much water is used and how much we collect through that component. There's a third operating component in the EWS rate structure, and that is when the plant is operating, then there's a third charge for whatever water is used that month. But there's two charges that go towards debt payment.
But we designed it, I know there's some problems with it because of some of the assumptions that were made, but my understanding was that those charges that are on the bill that happen all the time, regardless of whether it's running or not, are enough, bring in enough money to make our loan payment. Is that correct or no?
It depends on the usage.
It depends on the usage.
The original 218 proposition projected a little over $1 million in revenue from those two sources. Because of reduced consumption, we brought in $865,000 last fiscal year, and the debt service was $840,000. So yeah, we made it. That doesn't mean we're going to make it this year. It depends on consumption.
And are we okay on target, or you're not sure
Don't
at this
know.
point?
We haven't billed yet. We're billing today.
Okay.
I won't know till next week.
I see.
This billing period.
I see. But it was, so I'm not imagining that it was supposed to be, and I understand. I forgot that there was also the usage charge every month, regardless of whether it's on. But those charges, whether it's on or not, should add up to pay the loan payment, at least close enough that we shouldn't be worried about not making that payment.
If we get enough consumption, yes.
If we cut our consumption from where we are in half, I would say maybe we'd have a problem, but I don't see how that's going to happen again, is kind of I don't know how huge of a concern it is that we won't make the loan payment. I mean, I feel fairly confident that those numbers, when we looked at them, were designed so that even with low use, unless the use goes down to almost zero.
No, it wouldn't have to go down to
Okay.
zero. It would have to go down another 10%. And then it would be difficult to make it.
10% more?
Right.
Director Barringer?
Yes. I noticed there's no resolution or anything, and I think this is an opportunity for me to share with my fellow board members my opinions on these, and so I'd like to do so. I put a yes next to everything, and of course, you should be doing all of those things where yes is an obvious yes. I do think that we need to make some plans on, I'll take item number 4, which is my first no. I think we should make plans in March in accordance with Director Cliff's suggestion. If, in fact, we are continue to be in dire financial stress up until then, we can put some plans in place to put an administrative office reception, so to speak, much like we were going to have the sheriff come up there and he was going to use that front office. That office is available. Somebody knocks on the door, they have customer service, and moving the rest of the people over to the water and wastewater plant. I've been there. There's good offices over there, and it'd be a great place to do it. And we should put that in place now because it's going to take 6 months for us, or we should consider it now. I'm not saying do it now, but consider it now so that come December or January, if we're still in this situation, we've at least considered it. Also, I think that evaluating the land adjacent to the fire department and evaluating the inventory of properties makes sense for that purpose. If in March of next year we have some assets we can, yeah, that's number 6. Number 6 is a yes. And other than that, there's a lot of yeses. I do think item 8 depends on the next agenda item. In fact, number 7 does too, as far as eliminating future enrollment of reserve firefighters in the PERS, and 8. I think those two are going to be discussed at length here in a bit, so I'm going to postpone that. I don't think we should reduce AGP video. I think that we could get a nonprofit to pay for that, or maybe even we could make a collection here. But we need to make sure that we have visibility on that. And reducing the public information officer is a good idea, and if we need to tighten more, I wouldn't mind doing that. We've already accomplished Bartles and Wells. And so from an overall perspective, if you want guidance, that's the guidance from me. And thank you for bringing back a better outlook. But I think that we should not delay on some of these major things because we need to be prepared next year. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Thompson?
Yes, thank you, President Robinette. A number of points, some of that which are a little bit repetitious with Director Behringer's, but as to number 1, I think you indicated that one of the issues holding it up is the groundwater management plan, and so I would appreciate if Mr. Carmel could explain to us what process that is going to take place and when we can expect to see it, and what the prospects of that are. Land watch litigation, I'm not quite as convinced as Director Rice that it's not an issue, but I won't go there. Item 4, administrative offices, I kind of concur with Director Berger on that, and also the offices in the treatment plant. I think we can make a better use of the space there. With respect to number 6, Mrs. Farrell asked about the property holdings, and my assumption is that that refers to properties such as the home that's on San Simeon Creek Road, that property, and if there's any others, if you could explain to us what those holdings are that are under consideration. Number 8, Director Cliff talked about, and the word for that is non-supplanting. You can't replace local funds with federal funds. They have to be over and above what we provide from a local basis. So you can't reduce the staffing and use or reduce the amount of local funding for the fire department. It has to be over and above what we have now. And if you could also explain for me a little bit more as to what number 9 means, the integrated audit, and what we could expect in terms of cost savings there. And as with HEB video, when I was president several years ago, I made the decision, or with the board, to bring in the streaming function so that it was real time with respect to the meetings, and so I would also oppose any changes there. I think it's important that we maintain that. So with that. Management plan.
I'd be happy to at least touch base on where we are and where we're going. The groundwater management plan that's required by AB 3030 is procedurally very heavy. It takes approximately 2 months to go through the entire process. It involves 3 hearings, public. Hello. The process to actually adopt that groundwater management plan is procedurally very heavy. We are preparing a timeline that anticipates actually adopting the plan, hopefully without actually any extraordinary events to intervene, at the November regular meeting. It involves a notice public hearing to consider a notice of intention to adopt the plan with heavy public input, some noticing afterwards, an additional public hearing to actually consider the plan itself, and then adopting the plan by ordinance, which will require 2 meetings, probably 1 special meeting, and then it'll be adopted at a regular meeting, which we anticipate to be in November. And again, it will involve a significant amount of public input and several public hearings. We'll probably have a timeline included in the regular agenda packet for the September 24th meeting, so the board and the public will both know exactly how we plan on moving forward. And we're taking a different tack than I think was discussed earlier. We're really starting from scratch here and developing a new groundwater management plan. We have a 1980 groundwater management plan. It was adopted under a different enabling statute and a different legislative scheme. And it's the AB 3030 process is more intense and has a lot more specifics that have to be included, maps, recharge areas. So Bob Gressens is, as is normally the case, working through that process, devoting an enormous amount of time to it. And again, we'll at least give you an update and a timeline at the September 24th meeting to let you know exactly how this moves forward.
Okay, thank you.
And number 9, Madam President, Director Thompson, this is a program that we embarked on with the county, a collaborative effort where they partner with PG&E and ourselves and come out and evaluate all of our facilities, our well motors, everything at the wastewater treatment plant. And what it would, our ultimate goal would be to replace those inefficient motors, inefficient pumps that cost us a lot of money and electricity. And a funding mechanism for that would be those cost savings in your electrical bill. So it would be an agreement to, for an example, and I've talked about this multiple times, we've had at the wastewater treatment plant, the facility was built in the 1990s, and we have a 100 horsepower motor down there. We've made some adjustments to it, but it's essentially run since 1990, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. we've implemented some variable frequency drives to reduce the cost, but that's just one example of energy savings that could be accomplished, achieved by the district by replacing antiquated and old and inefficient motors, significantly reducing the district's carbon footprint. Now, again, you're saying, well, Jerry, how are you going to pay for that? And what's nice about this arrangement, if you will, is that the funding mechanism is offset by the cost that you save in electricity. So you're replacing an aging infrastructure, but you're also paying for it by a reduction in your electrical cost. Similar to solar on your house. You put solar on your house, your electric bill goes down, you take that money and you pay for your solar panels. So it's the same principle.
And the holdings that you had in mind?
That's to be further evaluated. You know, that's a touchy subject too. You know, which ones, what I'd want to do is I'd want to evaluate, other than the ranch, I'd want to evaluate all of our land, our holdings, all of our land, and see, and then come to you with a list and work with district council and say, okay, this is something that we could, and that's more long term because there's a public process involved in that. You have to offer that land, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tim, to a public agency first, and then there's the process of appraisals and things like that. But we are sitting on some lots that are just sitting there right now, and you know, there's some real opportunity there to generate some revenue. And again, public agencies do this all the time.
Thank you. And would you underscore the one statement you made, underscore the ranch is not on the table?
Probably like a Walmart's coming to Cambria, so that would be the next, you know, thing out there. But no, it's not, and it can't be. I mean, that's ridiculous. But there are things that there are, like Director Thompson said, the lot out there that we have adjacent to the EWS where the house is sitting on and things like that. You know, there's other lots that we have that are not being utilized right now, but they're owned by the district, and there's some opportunity there.
Okay. Yes, go ahead, Patrick.
I just wanted to point out that when a public agency owns a piece of property that it's not using for public purposes, we pay property taxes on it. So we have a lot of properties that every year we pay property tax on. So by somehow getting rid of those properties, it wouldn't just possibly raise money, but it would reduce our expenses.
Okay, it certainly sounds like something to look into. Everyone has spoken on this one, so I'm going to take my turn, and then we have a second round on it. And I really concur with what other directors have talked about, and I don't think I have much to add to it. You've been very thorough. But yes, I think I did want to comment on item number 1, and that, of course, is what is now hopefully the pending grant for the $4.3 million. This latest requirement that we are now working on with groundwater, you know, it is something that, I mean, I don't know how it was that we didn't know, and I don't know how it is we got awarded the money and then it came up later, but I do appreciate the fact that you are proacting to it, and we are not using the old 1980 groundwater report. We are using the updated regulations would be incorporated into it. So it will be completed.
Madam President, let me just clarify something. And you know, the county they've worked with us on multiple projects, but as they were evaluating and doing their internal audit, they were checking their boxes, and essentially we thought that our plan was sufficient. And then a dialogue pursued back and forth, and that we realized that it wasn't. There was nothing intentional or anything like this. I always try to find a silver lining in something, and this will result in an updated groundwater management plan. But you have to understand the county's position on this, or the indemnification. They are the conduit to the Department of Water Resources. They are the ones that implemented the Integrated Regional Water Management Plan that allowed districts like us to get the proceeds from Prop 84. So they're doing their due diligence. Is it frustrating? Yes, it's very frustrating. But you know, we have a plan. The county's working with us. The DWR is receptive to us, and nobody wants to keep that money from us. And I just want to make that perfectly clear. It's just taking a little bit longer than when we thought it would take.
Thank you. The other, and people have commented already on the, certainly relocating the administrative offices somewhere, I think is a very good cost-cutting. Certainly not paying rent would be a better situation. It just is that with so much on all of our plates right now, that one would take more time, so I would only like to see it sidelined. But at a better time, when we're looking again at continuing to save, that would be something to again bring back.
One thing that I wrote down that when Director Rice was commenting on, and I'll let Patrick comment on, when you're doing projections, you really should take a worst-case scenario. And that's what we've done. Patrick's indicated on several occasions the $75,000 in maintenance because of the past record of our infrastructure repairs and things like that. And correct me if I'm wrong, Patrick, but we've taken a pretty conservative estimate on revenues too. So, you know, this is a, and really that's the way we wanted to do it, was a worst case scenario. And Patrick, you want to? No, that's good. Yeah. So I just wanted to, you know, I'm not trying to soften this at all, but you know, when we strategize on these projections and the cost cutting measures, we took an overly conservative approach to what we anticipated future deficits being. We did not take a liberal approach in expenditures or revenues coming in. And so with that, I just wanted to let everybody know about that also.
Okay, and that's the only other comment other than I also would like to keep our AGP video because I feel it's a way that we do include all of our neighbors, all of our Cambrians in having access. I appreciate all the people that are here today. We very much welcome that, but there are people that for whatever reasons are not able to get here, and so certainly that would be something that we would want to keep. So overall, I think you've done a good job of being as lean and conservative as you can while we do get through a challenge, and that's what we have here. We have a challenge. Will we meet it? Yes, we will. Director Rice?
I just wanted to make two quick points. That originally, when we applied for this grant, it was for $3.75 million, and we were awarded a larger amount, which thankfully that's a very good thing, and we are thankful to the county for helping that to happen, that increase. I also wanted to note that I know that our personnel costs can be high. I wanted to make sure that the community knows, though, that our water and wastewater guys, if you look at similarly situated communities, are not at the top of the ranking in the state. They're actually close to near the bottom of what folks that have their qualifications and licenses get paid statewide for districts close to our size. So, I mean, our monthly costs are low and as low as they can be on some of our employees. So I didn't want people to think that we haven't already been. We're not just willy-nilly and haven't been willy-nilly spending on these kinds of things. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. No willy-nilly. Any further comments from the board or discussion? We have another request. Actually, I will have to ask, this is a person that requested public comment again on 3A that's spoken before. Is that acceptable, legal counsel?
At your discretion.
Okay, and my discretion on this request is come on down, Jerry.
Again, Jerry Farrell, Cambria. My question, and it is a question, I know we're very dry, our well levels are okay, but you're letting us water once a week. And is that going to affect what we can drink or not? I just don't understand why we can water once a week and still work on an emergency water distribution plan.
Madam President?
Yes.
as indicated in the staff report, we did this for fire reasons. I know that there was a discussion about, Patrick mentioned in his staff report, and about extra revenues, but that was not the intent of staff or the board. So I want everybody to know that I think everybody in the room can agree that we're in probably the worst fire condition that the community's ever been in. So that was the driving force. So we had our board meeting on, help me out, the 24th of August. When do we have it? When did we had it late August, and we just read bills, and we just did our reads. And so we'll have a relatively short period of time to determine how much more water we used. I know that's a concern. And what I want Patrick to do in the September board meeting is take that relatively short window of time and look at residential use, look at multifamily use, and look at commercial use. And it's not very much time, but it'll give us an indication of that week or 9-day period. Bring that to the board so we can answer some of the community's questions. And then also let you know in his financial manager's report how much extra revenue we anticipated. To really answer that question, it would be 2 months from now, October, November, when we read again. And that would give us a really good, accurate, if the board wants us for whatever reason to read the town a month on a monthly basis, we can do that too. I think we're doing that, aren't we, Patrick? Or
We did start at
reading on a monthly
September 1st.
basis or not doing? Yeah. So we'll be able to come back. I stand corrected. We'll be able to come back in October with some good readings for you. But I can't. Are we using the community's water supply for outside irrigation? We'll have to. I don't think so. I really don't.
Well, and I think people, it's good to remember that it has everything to do with the very high fire risk, keeping as much of what we do have in our yards green. And I think it also has to do with access, again, to everyone in Cambria. Some people simply cannot pay to have someone to come in every week, and yet we continued when we did that. We paid a lot of money, those that could afford it, to buy water that's coming from the same aquifer in the first place. So I think it's something we'll evaluate. I don't think it's like permanent at all, but it's one of those things that we're getting so dry, and it really becomes more the fire risk concern. But it's not cast in concrete. We'll come back and see what we have too.
Madam President, the board, to remind the community, the board did not change the allocation of water. So we anticipate that people will continue to use that water wisely, and even continue on some of the methodologies that they've used in the past of taking some of that gray water, if you will, and going outside. So my early conversations with Justin, he feels like there hasn't been a tremendous spike in, that everybody's concerned about in the water usage.
Okay, we have, and since I certainly did allow another public comment on this, Tina Dickinson would like to have public comment again on 3A.
Thank you, President Robinette. Couple of things. We've been in these restrictions for almost 2 years. You did 2 weeks ago lift that restriction to allow watering 1 day a week within the 50 gallons per day per person. I know that for myself, I certainly have been going out on Tuesdays and watering several gallons. I know that my water bill is going to be more expensive come this next billing cycle. I'm seeing my neighbors doing the same thing. So to think that you're not going to have more revenue or come to the 865,000, I do not believe is the case. I believe that you will get it, probably more. The other thing I wanted to bring up, and I didn't have time in the first, was on number 10, the general manager meeting with the Regional Water Quality Control Board staff regarding the sampling of the EWS. I just spoke to John Roque this morning, and he forwarded to me an email that he sent to Jeff Densmore at the DDW, because it is up to the DDW, not the regional board. And I have that email. I'll be happy to forward it to you, Mr. Gruber. But that is not a done deal yet. They may have come out here 2 weeks ago Wednesday, Mr. Harris and Mr. Roque, but that email was sent off to Jeff Dinsmore. They're the ones that make the final determination whether you can reduce the amount of sampling. The other thing is that last year the Windsor Bridge well right now is, I pay attention every day, 3.30. We've got 42 in SR4. We have about 12 and a half in our San Simeon wells combined above sea level. All that's compared to last year, no problem. But we used 134 acre feet of water for the tracer test in San Simeon. We did go down to 2.87. That's the lowest we went down at the Windsor Bridge, even though you got the permit to go down to 2 feet. My suggestion is that you just leave things alone, because the only reason you're going to flip the switch is to make more money right now, and I would say you might be looking at a lot of money just to run it. It was for emergency drought conditions for current residents, and I think you need to hold to that. The only other question I had was the EIR. Engineer Gresham said that was going to be ready in January. Now, with this financial crisis, I would ask, when will the EIR be completed? And the other question for maybe Mr. Carmel and the general manager, in reading the Prop 84 agreement, it says that you need a regular CDP for the Prop 84 funding. That was the other question I would pose to you, and I would hope you could answer that. Thank you.
Okay. Madam President.
Director Barringer?
Yeah, Madam President, may I suggest that we discontinue these comments after this discussion? We have a long agenda. We need to continue to move forward, and they aren't germane to this particular issue. We weren't talking about well levels. This was talking about some cost reduction, and if we don't do a little bit of expediting, we aren't going to get to safer and be able to have the time to do it, and others. So that's my suggestion for comment after one person has already done it. To redo a comment, I don't think is germane.
And I'm comfortable with that. How does the rest of the board feel? It is discretionary. I'll call you, Mary.
The slips were out well after other people were talking. They're commenting on other people's discussion.
We've had the public comment period. And I know, and so she's waiting. So I'm going to go with what the board says. It's our discretionary decision. And I do think, yes, we'll have Mary Webb in a moment with public comment.
Right.
But we're starting to have quite a few repeats now, and I think...
Right. Ms. Webb didn't have a comment, so I would accept that. But as I think any other slips after that, it would be not germane.
Okay. Any problems with that? Okay, so we're going to end public comment on item 3A with Mary Webb.
Thank you, Director Robinette. I'll keep it short.
Please take your 3 minutes, Mary.
I've read the staff report. I've read all the descriptions of the cost-cutting measures, and again, I really find a lot of those measures are not going to do us any good. We signed a contract that was not to exceed $9 million for an emergency water supply project. What happened was, and then we were supposed to get a grant for $4.3 million. The $4.3 million grant was supposed to help pay back the $9 million loan. Instead of getting the grant and paying back the $9 million loan, we spent $4.3 million more than we had, and now the project costs at least $13 million, not including interest payments of about $4 million. So even if we get the $4 million, we're in the hole for all of the rest of our costs for the CSD. The salaries, fire department, health department, rent, lights, cameras, action, everything else still has to be paid, and we don't have any money coming in unless you let everybody water, which is kind of what you're doing to raise more revenue. That's why we're letting people water. Even if we get the grant, we're in the hole. We have to fix the wastewater treatment plant. It's $10 million, people, $10 million. I don't think we can run the water project till we fix the wastewater treatment plant, which means we need the $10 million. I'm not an accountant. I don't know if any of you up there are accountants. how well you really understand accounting, but I think our general manager has failed us, our accountant, I'm sorry, he's new, I don't blame you. I really appreciate you actually being here. I'm surprised you're actually working for us. So I don't really blame him. The legal counsel has failed us. District Engineer Gressens has failed us, that you weren't warned properly just about what this project was going to lead us into. Now we have been led into it. I absolutely think we need some kind of fiduciary receivership of the district, someone with that really knows what they're doing to come in and cut our losses and figure out what we're going to do with whatever we have left. Our assets are on the line. I'm sorry, all of our properties are on the line. If you read the loan, everything is on the line. If you take our property tax money away from healthcare and fire to pay for the emergency water supply project, we don't have a healthcare district either, which is, I guess, why we're having another special meeting on Tuesday. Please, please get good advice. Go hire whoever we need to take receivership of the district. Let's start bailing ourselves out now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. We have an out-of-town guest with us today who I think I want to certainly be fair to. And I did allow discretionarily, certainly if someone came back up, and I thought that was right. She wanted to finish what she had to say. She had used less than her 3 minutes in the first place. However, because you are a guest in our community, I am going to say this will be the final on public comment. This is all that's been requested again for 3A. So you will have your final say on item 3A. Julie Tacker.
Thank you, Madam President. I am Julie Tacker, and I will be brief. I will be brief. I think you're going to continue to see these types of reports, and I think it would be helpful if you also included a line item that shows your reserve, however piddly it is. And what, in defense of the speakers that have come before me and talked about your water, you are turning on the machine and it will help pay its own debt. So that is part of the formula in which you are looking to find your way out of this hole. Unfortunately, when you're in a hole, you're supposed to stop digging, but you continue to dig. I didn't hear any of you say anything about your lobbyist, and I'm sorry, but $10,000 a month is obscene, and you really should put that in the formula here as a cost-cutting measure, even if you cut them in half. It's too much, and it's insulting to the ratepayer who is bearing the burden of this, and I encourage you to do just that, if nothing else.
Thank you. Okay, we now need to look on where we're going with this. Is this this is just a discussion item? This is not a motion? We've discussed a lot of items that we think.
I think I've got a consensus and direction from the board regarding some of the cost-cutting measures, and I think there was consistency with regards to ones you're not interested in doing this time, and we'll continue to bring financial reports back. And can I just say one thing? And I know you want to. I just got to say one thing. It's not true that we have to redo the wastewater plant to run the EWS. We've gone from 40 and 35 milligrams per liter parts per million in nitrates. Our last result was 1.47. That's AWT, Advanced Waste Treatment Plant parameters. We did that collectively amongst staff. We did it by making some operational adjustments, but so we will eventually need to improve the wastewater treatment plant because it's old. The TMDL requirements will require us to do that. But in the interim, we've reduced nitrates going out of that plant down to remarkably low levels. And I just wanted to let the community know that. The pounds total maximum daily load of nitrates we're putting out has been reduced from, like I said, for 40 milligrams per liter to down well below 5. And so that's not an issue at all regarding the EWS.
Okay, Thank you very much. All right, so I think we've given the feedback and have consensus amongst the board. We'll move on then to item 3B and Chief.
Sir?
You know, I would really like if Chief wanted to do this one. It's been, so I was just going to introduce it, but Chief, Madam President, item 3B is discussion and consideration of Resolution 32-2015 regarding safer grant acceptance. And Chief Lewin did not get the Hawaiian shirt memo, so we're just, he's going to present it in his dress. But thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President and Board, for having us to bring this item forward. Before I jump into this item, if you could indulge me for a minute, we have a lot of firefighters in the room today, and of course this item is about staffing. And before I move into the details of this staffing question, we have with us one special captain with us today. He's a captain at our Cambria station and Station 10. He served with this department for 36 fire seasons, about 32 full-time years of that. And with that, he's retiring today. Tomorrow morning, he goes off shift for his last time. And so it's quite special in the fire service to be able to acknowledge him publicly like this. He is a native son of San Luis Obispo County. His father served with CAL FIRE as well, and he's been in this particular battalion for over 20 years. And Mark, if you just come up for 1 second, just so we can see you.
Well, thanks for the applause.
You got to speak into the mic.
Speak into it, okay. Thanks for the applause, and you know, it's been a privilege and an honor to be a firefighter and to have my entire career in this county. Please face the board as well, please. Okay. Privilege and an honor to.
AGP, you need to put the video up on the screen, please.
Okay. Oh, okay. Well, thank you very much for the applause. It's been a privilege and an honor to be a firefighter and fire captain in this county. To have my whole career in this county, I've seen a lot of changes, and it's all overall been very positive. You have the highest trained firefighters in the nation in this county. They're all trained at a really high level, and probably one of the things when I started working at the assignment in Cambria about 2 years ago, it wasn't the first time I was at Cambria, but I served with the crew, and we were here during the big tree down thing about 12 years ago, working on that. And but when I came to Cambria, I worked in a lot of different stations in this unit, and a lot of times we integrate with other fire departments, and Cambria Fire and our station and the ambulance station, it's really almost like one big fire department. I've never had such a good relationship with other members of a fire department. Normally we have pretty good relationships, but sometimes it gets competitive because we're all firefighters. And, but it's really been a privilege working with Cambria. You have one of your captains is going to be retiring in 2 weeks, and hopefully you can do the same thing I'm doing here. Thanks again for the applause, and thanks, Chief. Oh.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark and I were seasonal firefighters together. We have a long tradition, and I will miss having him in our department daily. Okay, on to the item here. The item that you have before you, 3B, is an item to determine whether you want to accept an awarded grant from the Homeland Security from FEMA. The FEMA grants are called SAFER grants, which stands for Staffing for Adequate Fire Emergency Response. FEMA has $340 million that they were able to distribute in 2014. Under the direction of the fire chief in March of 16th, Cambria fire staff applied for the grant, and on August 24th, the grant was awarded, and it's time now to determine whether we want to accept that grant. We've already asked for a 30-day extension, which brings us to a deadline of September 24th. The purpose of the grant was to provide 3 additional personnel to the Cambria Fire Department so that we could add 1 additional staffing to the engine daily. Unfortunately, the amount of the grant that was requested is undervalued for what the cost would be to be able to do that. We've contacted the folks at FEMA, and they told us that there unfortunately is not any more funding in the 2014 cycle, but that if we wanted to, we could ask for a reduction in the number of personnel that would be hired, instead of 3 to a lesser number that would be within the monies that were granted. Again, the amount that was granted was $396,525 for Cambria. The amount that would be necessary is between $441,000 and $561,000, and there's a sheet within your packet from the finance manager which outlines those costs. The benefit, of course, of taking this grant is additional personnel, which brings us closer to achieving the NFPA 1710 standards. We also included a frequently asked questions document that was prepared by fire department staff so that you could look through and answer some of the questions that you may have. So in conclusion, staff asks that you direct us to either accept the grant, and the board would then direct us to, it would adopt Resolution 32-2015 and direct staff to immediately work with SAFER grant administrators on modifying the grant terms to reduce the number of firefighters hired so as not to exceed the grant award, or direct staff to reject the SAFER grant and the administrators, and contact SAFER grant administrator to explain that the rejection is due to inadequate requested funding and that the CCSD would like to be considered for future grants. There is another grant cycle they anticipate opening up in January and February of 2016. And of course, all of the staff is available for any questions that you have.
Thank you for that introduction. And now I would like to open the public hearing, and we will take public comment next. And first we have public comment on item 3B. Jerry Wood.
Thank you, President and Board. I am very, very pleased that you have opted to revisit the SAFER grant after the denial. It makes a big difference. I strongly urge that the board approves the SAFER grant to enhance the fire safety and maintain the high level of fire and life safety to the citizens of Cambria. I would hope that the additional costs referenced in previous meetings could easily be provided by reducing expenditures not related to fire and life safety in Cambria. In the past, funding has been diverted from the fire department for other purposes. It is important to bring that funding back. Although important funding for areas such as the Fiscalini Ranch and others could be reduced until additional funding is obtained for those other purposes. The fire and life safety of Cambria should be your highest priority, and funding should be supported by this board. Director Cliff, I got to ask a question. When you made a comment about the SAFER grant, you said that if we got it, there's a problem with staffing and we would have trouble. I hope that staffing cut would not be in the fire department. I would hope that it would be in other areas that CCSD has jurisdiction over, not fire. We need the bodies. We need them bad. And this would also reduce potentially reduce the overtime that was brought up at some of the ad hoc meetings. So I strongly encourage you to grant it and make up the 160,000
Jerry,
through
you
other.
need to address me as the president when you're having public comment, please.
Okay. Well, I was asking him for it because he asked the question, so I apologize.
It's all right. Thank you.
I'm not politically astute, but I would ask that there's something like $160,000 short, and that I think could be made up by reducing the other areas. Like, I hate to say Fiscalini Ranch, but there are other areas that could be reduced to make up that money so we get the full three people. And the grant plus the making up the 160, so we get the full 3 people for the 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, on item 3B, we have Julie Tacker. You're on the board, and where were you? Los Osos?
Los Osos, yes.
Oh, very good,
From
thank you.
2004 to 2008.
Thank you.
And in 2004, our community engaged a contract with CAL FIRE, and we've been very happy ever since. What I am concerned about is the SAFER grant application. If I were to have written this, I would not have signed my name to it. I have concerns about some of the statements that are asserted here. I don't believe some of the information is accurate, and that I am a taxpayer. We are all taxpayers. Our federal tax goes to FEMA. FEMA is funding this, and there may be another community that is as deserving, and if you've overstated your need, someone else may be going without. One item was the list of the regular mutual aid area. We protect the following additional critical infrastructure. And I cannot imagine that Cambria Fire responds to the Phillips 66 plant on the Nipomo Mesa, which it says you do. It also says that you would respond to Diablo Canyon. This is a little overstated, and I think that's uncomfortable for me. The other thing, and listening to the financial crisis that you're in, item 12A, you have, your application explains how your administration draw is to the CCSD from the fire fund, and that it says here that money will go back there and a new administrative position will be, in effect, put into play, and that payroll services would be outsourced. And I simply don't buy it. There's a $160,000 shortfall, and what I'm hearing from the previous discussion is you really cannot afford this free money. Now, what Chief Lewin said is interesting about reducing the grant to 2 SAFER grant firefighters, but your analysis, your financial analysis doesn't say that. And the last thing I'll say is that you will be married to these employees through your PERS contribution throughout their careers should they stay in the PERS system, and that is something you should consider.
Thank you. Okay, next on public comment on 3B is Margie Sesser.
Good afternoon, President. I'm Margie Sesser from Cambria, and I want to tell you that I've had over 40 years' experience in working in higher education and private nonprofits and multiple agencies that have grants. I've been a grant writer and participated in receiving many grants, overseeing grants as project director, and so have had a lot of experience in looking at grants. I have a different perspective than the previous speaker. One of the things is when you do get a grant, you are so lucky because you are competing federally. A FEMA grant is a federal grant. I've been in Washington, D.C. looking at grants. You're competing nationally. And so when you have staff who do write a grant, on behalf of your community. They should be commended, and especially if they were granted. And the other thing is we are in a dire circumstances here, and I live here, and I live next to the forest, and I want more firefighters, and so do all my friends and all my neighbors that live in this community. And we're happy that you represent us, like you said, and you want to hear what we think. And many of my friends are working today and they can't be here. And that's what they think too. They think we are lucky to be able to have been awarded this grant. And I will tell you, as a project director of many grants that supplemented a basic grant, that when the money went away, you were not beholden to keep those staff. I mean, there was CETA, there's been all kinds of grants that funded multiple agencies. When the money went away, you weren't beholden to keep them. But right now, in this dire time that we need firefighters, we should accept this grant, and I hope you do consider that.
Thank you very much. And last public comment on item 3B, Tina Dickinson.
Tina Dickinson. I don't know how many of those in the audience actually read the application, but I have. And I, as Ms. Tacker pointed out, was rather surprised because with the controversy that has surfaced in our town, which is very sad, actually, CCSD versus CAL FIRE and all these different meetings people are having. I've purposely not attended them because they don't have the information I need. But this struck me as being rather odd. On page 6 of 26, regular mutual aid area. Much of what has been discussed, because I do read about the meetings and what took place, is that CCSD, they are the ones that put out the structural fires, and CAL FIRE takes care of the forest and the rural areas, whatever. So if that's the case, this is interesting to me. But CCSD Fire Department, 46 miles Pacific Coast Highway, 55 miles Highway 46, Hearst Castle, Hearst San Simeon State Historical Monument, even though they do have their own fire department, by the way, Los Padres National Forest, Diablo Nuclear Power Plant, 2 emergency services communication towers, 69 miles Highway 101, Cal Poly University, 50,000 students. There are 20,000 students at Cal Poly. Cuesta College with 23,000 students, 13,000 students. Phillips 66 Oil Refinery, Morro Bay Harbor, Camp San Luis and Camp Roberts Army Bases, San Luis Obispo Airport, and Pacific Coast Railway, 70 miles of track. So the folks who are really concerned about CCSD putting out a structural fire, which, by the way, there were 0 last year, on their reporting, I have issues. The other thing I have issues with is on page 19, there are 10 questions, supplemental information, that were not answered. If Chief Miller, former Chief Miller, filled this out, I am unable to provide this information for the 10 questions that go from page 19 through page 26. I think they go 1 through 11. He couldn't answer them. And I find that rather amazing because this is information that would be at his fingertips, I would think. So I certainly am not in favor of any additional firefighters being hired that would cost the district more. I appreciate the fact that the grant was awarded, and if you do decide, I think you have to look within the budget and say that yes, we can afford 1 or 2 more firefighters within this grant. But we certainly can't afford 3. We're in a mess. We all know it. So I would ask you to look at those issues. Quite frankly, well, I'll save it for another day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes then all public testimony for this open public hearing. And so now I'm going to close the public hearing, and I think we will move then to Director Thompson.
Yes. Thank you, President Robinette. Well, let me say up front that I'm going to support this, okay?
sorry.
I want to say up front that I'm going to support this.
Okay.
I think it's commendable that Engineer Torlano took the initiative to put this together. I think that there are some issues that need to be clarified, that need to be improved upon before it's submitted. I've got over 30 years of experience with public safety grants, and I'd be happy to participate in reviewing the final submission of this. But I think also that if we can get a couple more firefighters paid for by FEMA, that we should take advantage of the funding. When the budget is prepared, I would ask that we have good financial information so we don't run into the same problems that we had last time, which would provide the cost fully burdened of the salary and benefits to including projected increases, because so that we don't run short of funding midstream, so that we make sure that we have more than enough funding to include in the application. I read in here that the budget can include audit costs. I think that being the case, we should determine what those costs might be. And additionally, I assume we have an approved federal indirect cost rate, and we should determine whether or not that can be included in the application. On page 6, it was mentioned about the other areas. Well, those are, I think, regular mutual aid areas that we participate in, and I don't have any problem with those, because I think that when called upon, our firefighters do respond to those areas, as we also get aid from Cayugas, Morro Bay, and wherever else when we need them. So that's what that includes. One of the issues, and Ms. Tacker raised upon, is the fact that the fire department in and of itself is not a legal entity which is authorized to enter into contractual agreements. And so I would want CCSD to prepare some guidelines for all CCSD departments, to include water, wastewater, and so forth, and fire, in terms of how grants are applied for. In other jurisdictions that I'm familiar with, there was a notice of intent that was provided early on in terms of the department wanting to apply for a grant, and so then it was properly vetted so that it was understood what the true costs were, and the legislative body was able to review it and approve it, and also the execution of the certifications and the grant agreement. All that should take place. That should be part of the process. And so I would hope that that our administrative staff would put something together which would apply to all the departments within CCSD. Also, I think because there will be financial reports required, that a point of contact should include our finance officer, so that he is in the loop of this award. But with that, and like I said, with the modifications necessary to bring it into compliance, I would certainly support this proposal.
Thank you. Director Barringer?
Yes, Director Thompson, I agree with, I would definitely support it with the conditions you had, but we have a grant here. We can't modify the grant. We're not making an application. The application has been complete. We have until the 21st to accept it, and it has been found and shown significantly that we aren't going to get any more money, and the money we have. So with that in mind, for the next application, I believe that's the case. But this has to be accepted as is, and it's underfunded by $200,000.
I don't think that's the situation. I think.
Okay. Director Cliff, what's your impression?
No, I'm going to defer to the chief, and the chief seemed to indicate that could be modified downward by to 2 people. And I have a secondary question. Obviously, you can't. There's no money for this grant cycle, but is it possible in the January grants cycle, January 2016 grant cycle, to ask for an amendment to this one so that you have the third person? Because we're not that far away from, rather than start over, which is what I think you're proposing.
No, I wasn't proposing that. I do have some questions for the chief too,
But I was wondering if accepting this one on the conditions under the resolution, which is no money from CCSD out, and which modifying it downward, I don't have a problem with that. I would wonder if you could amend it once the new cycle of money is available, rather than going for a secondary, or wait 2 years. And I don't know if you can do that, and I don't know that you could answer that, but I'm wondering if that's not a possibility.
Okay, so I think the first question is, yes, this grant has been been awarded by FEMA to the CSD. The only action that we need to take now is to accept the award. In talking with the grant administrator yesterday, she told me that there is no additional money in this grant cycle, so there's no way to ask for additional money for this grant. If we want additional money, we have to reapply in the next grant cycle, which fortunately is coming up in January or February of 2016. That process, she sounded particularly optimistic that we were successful once. There's no penalty for us rejecting it at this time in a next grant cycle. But of course, as one of your speakers said, it's a competitive process nationwide. The question about can we modify the language in this particular grant? Not sure I know if we can modify words that we've already written in the grant. I think we can modify the number of firefighters. But sir, I'd have to check on that, Director Thompson. And then there was one more question, is that right?
Well, I had a question. The question would be that if we accepted the lower number, and we, instead of staffing 3, we staff 2 for this first year, or, period, would we still get the same amount of money, or would they reduce the amount of money from 300 to 200?
The grant award amount is fixed. We can get that money for this grant. But clearly, we are significantly below the amount needed for 3 firefighters.
Right. So if we did get 2 firefighters this time, we could start taking the money in. We could afford the 2 because we get enough money for the 2, and then by then, hopefully, we would. Even if we don't get additional grant funds, we might actually, fund it ourselves. The second year for the third person. That's kind of where I'm thinking. And does that sound like a plausible approach?
Well, if we get this SAFER grant, that's our SAFER grant is my understanding. We can't have 2 SAFER grants running simultaneously. So this would be what we would be operating off of for a 2-year period that begins in no later than 6 months. We have to activate the grant in 6 months.
So if we accept this grant, we couldn't next year ask for 1?
That's correct, Director.
Okay. We'd have to wait till the grant cycle of this one runs out.
That's my understanding, Director Cliff. We can, there is in SAFER the allowance for asking for a grant at the end of a grant cycle.
Right.
And that has been done, as a matter of fact, it was done in the 5 cities. Fire Authority did that, but they were not given a grant again. Okay. I think that's correct, yes.
Madam President,
Yes.
Patrick has a really important comment to make. I just reached over and asked him something. The question I asked him is, do we have enough to cover all the miscellaneous costs for 2? That was one question. And how would that fit into this is a question for Chief, how would that fit into our scheduling, since we have a 48 on 96 off? And the second question is, Patrick just said that we have to front this money and then get reimbursed. So I want to make sure that that's...
We have to, would you please tell us, Patrick, what you were talking about?
Mr. Gruber asked me if 2 firefighters could be funded with a $395,000. Yes, it can. It pretty much fits into that amount. But the way grants work typically, and I'm sure this is one, you spend money and then you put in a claim to be reimbursed under the grant. So if it's every quarter or every 6 months, I'm not sure what the timing is, but we would have to spend however much it costs for at least 3 months, and then put in to be reimbursed and wait another month or two. So you get behind the curve a little bit. So with cash flow right now, if we're looking at starting in 6 months, hopefully we'll get the grant and it won't be a problem. But if we don't receive the $4 million grant, that could be could contribute to our cash flow problem.
Do you have any further information on that? So we would have to pay up front for these two people and then eventually get the money?
I do not know the answer to that.
Let me ask this question, because the time element is involved here. If we accept this grant today, you said we have 6 months in which to activate it. And does that also mean that within 6 months we can back out?
I don't believe that's correct, Director Cliff. We accept it, and we're in the grant. No, I'm not sure those kinds of questions because I've never experienced it before.
Patrick, could you find out, though, for sure with this grant, that no matter when, if we did accept it and did activate it, that they do literally expect us to pay for the 2 additional personnel, and then eventually they start periodically reimbursing us?
Yeah, I can
Let
check
me
into
just
it.
say, with respect to federal grants, quarterly financial reports are submitted, so you don't front the whole $200,000. You would have to front 3 months' salary, basically.
For each of them?
Right, and then on a reimbursement basis, those monies would be reimbursed to the district.
It couldn't have come at a more challenging moment.
I agree with Director Thompson now that he says that I've been involved in many federal grants, and that's exactly right. There's a quarterly process. The question that you also asked is about scheduling. Because the firefighters at Cambria work platoon shifts, in other words, there's 3 shifts, ABC shifts. 2 firefighters obviously is not adequate to cover 7 days a week. So the plan would most likely be that we would cover the peak days of the week with that 4th firefighter, the 2 full-time, the reserve, and then the SAFER grant firefighter. So essentially the coverage would probably be something like I'll make the assumption the peak days are Friday, Saturday, Sunday, when many of the tourists are here, et cetera.
Okay, and Director Rice?
Somebody mentioned that this could reduce the amount of overtime costs that we may experience. Is that in your experience?
Yeah, the advantage of more employees is you get the economy of scale. You have more people to pull from, so in essence, you get a reduction in overtime.
So there's some money right there, probably.
Continue on, Director Rice.
Continue on.
So the other point that I wanted to make, thank you, Chief Lewin. The other point I wanted to make I'm looking at page 13 of 26, item number 12. It's also a little baby number in the bottom at the bottom of the page, number 25. It says, is it your department's intent to sustain positions filled under this grant after the completion of the period of performance? And it says yes, and this seems to me would be the most serious policy issue that we would need to address, and hopefully we would be able to address it, because this seems like something this is the time. We need the money for the fire protection of this community. I am fully in support of accepting this money. I don't know if this needs to be changed or if we can change it, but it seems to me that continuing the positions after the grant is up, this is the time. Hopefully the drought will be over in 2 years, for heaven's sakes. And hopefully we would have enough money to continue to fund those positions. But if we didn't, I wouldn't want to be lying to the feds, for heaven's sakes. But that does seem like a policy issue. How many firefighters are we staffing per engine, or whatever the units are of doing that? That's not my expertise, but I'm fully in support of accepting this money. The community needs the extra fire protection, but I do want to make sure that we're not going to get ourselves into a jam over that item. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll take my turn now. And that was another good point, Director Rice, that you raised. first of all, let me state, I do want to support this grant request and this, actually this award, this item. However, I do have quite a few questions. And so there, just to clarify, there does seem to be some discrepancies throughout the grant. For example, keeping the people after the grant goes away. One of my questions is, because I just didn't know, do we provide mutual aid to all those places listed?
President Robinette and directors, okay, so there's two kinds of mutual aid. There's automatic aid and there's mutual aid. Automatic aid happens every day in Cambria between Station 10, Cambria Cal Fire, and and Cambria CSD Fire Station. Every day, automatic aid between the two agencies. That is even larger on a structure fire in Cambria. We have automatic aid with the Cayucas Fire Department as well as the Cal Fire Cayucas Station. Mutual aid is a requested type of aid, and that can happen anywhere in the state of California. So if a fire occurs somewhere in California and mutual aid is needed and Cambria is willing to send it, then it goes. And the same, of course, occurs here in San Luis Obispo County. We have a county-wide mutual aid plan that does include Cambria Fire, and it was activated on the first day of the Cuesta Fire when they sent their water tender to the Cuesta Fire. So yes, mutual aid can occur anywhere in the county, but it's not automatic aid.
Thank you. I'm comfortable with that response. I do want to support a grant that is accurate, and no problems with this. And I think you've made it very clear that this would cover 2 positions, and that's what we would need to begin with. Okay.
I just want to I want to leave that number to the finance manager on how many positions it can fund.
Could it be 1?
It could be 1. It's a tight number. I just want so let me sort of give you in a nutshell the cost. I think if you turn to the finance manager's page, what is the
39.
Accessing. So you can see that we have the cost of the employees, and so we have the total cost at of $285,000 essentially per year in the second year. I'm sorry. So the second year we're going to be spending $285,000. Now that's at the current rates with a 5% increase for raises that they would get. And there's some additional costs that I think you brought up that could be included in what those needs are, some the personnel, some of the equipment costs, et cetera. So I would rather not be committed, I guess is what I'm asking, to you must get 2. I would rather, if you commit us to going for this grant, that you allow staff the opportunity to make sure that we're not using any CCSD general fund.
And that's fine, yes.
Boy,
just so we're going to stay. We're going to stay within the grant we got.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I think we're good with that.
We have to accept it by the 24th,
Yes, sir.
5 p.m. or
Well,
federal time or what?
Well, I just wanna
Because
But there's a
there
discrepancy
still are
in
some
the
questions here,
material.
and we do have a meeting on the 24th.
right. But
But it
I do
says
see
the
in the Q&A,
21st.
it says 21st. In
Yeah,
the
see, there's 2
Q&A.
different dates here. I was going to ask you, which date do you need to send this off to actually get it awarded?
We have to let them know by the 24th that we're accepting the grant. Now, in my conversation with the grant administrator, they have concerns because, as you know, the federal government's budget begins October 1st.
Mm-hmm.
So I need your decision by the 24th, but we're going to wait to send the letter till October 1st.
And so they know that,
Yeah.
and we're okay.
Yeah.
All right, are there other questions, comments before we look for a motion? Yes.
I'd actually, my comment would be in the form of a motion that we make a final decision on the 24th, if in fact that is the case. But I would move that we accept the grant as long as we keep the expenditures from using any of the district's general funds, and we would staff at a 1 or 2 person, and the intent is to staff at a 1 and 2 person level based upon conversations with staff. That's what.
The resolution includes that.
It does.
The
But
resolution includes, under no circumstances shall CCSD general fund money be used to supplement the SAFER grant.
Okay. So I'd be willing to actually move to accept the grant.
second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any
Well, I think we
additional
also,
comment,
that also
Director
has to
Thompson?
include adopting the resolution.
Okay. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Do you want to modify your
Oh, that's emergency.
motion?
Yeah, I'll read it as
Yeah,
long as.
move to adopt resolution 32, 2015 is what you said.
Yeah, that's what I do. I move.
Page 8, the bottom.
Keep going.
Mr. Carmel, are we doing this correctly?
The resolution itself needs to be adopted. And
I
it does
move-
it does have language in there that indicates that no general fund money shall be used to supplement the SAFER grant.
Okay, I move that we adopt Resolution 32-2015,
Accepting the,
accepting the 2015 SAFER Grant Award.
I'll second.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded that we accept this resolution. Any further comments, discussions? Okay, may we have a roll call vote, please? Ta-da!
Director Berenger,
Aye.
Director Thompson,
Aye.
Director Rice,
Aye.
Vice President Cliff,
Aye.
President Robinette.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. We're going to have a little break. This is actually, we've been kind of sitting here over 2 hours again. So we will come back then with 3C right after the break. Let's max 10 minutes.
10 minutes, so at 10 minutes to 5, we're ready to rock. Okay.
Okay, that's it.
Packers are closed.
5:15.
And we are now into item 3C, and Mr. Carmel is going to introduce that.
Wow, I got pretty excited because I saw Chief Lewin stepping up to take it over. I'll be really short, and then you can give the real information. As you will probably recall, a couple of months ago, we were here talking about an emergency permit for tree removal, hazardous tree removal, for the entire district, public and private parcels. Unfortunately, the conditions the county imposed were such that they created a liability and some expense for the district, and ultimately we didn't accept that permit. Before you today, we have a permit that deals exclusively with trees, hazardous trees identified by CAL FIRE on the district's parcels. The conditions are somewhat similar, but again, it only addresses our trees on our parcels. And it's a pretty dangerous situation. The county's been very magnanimous in waiving all fees, eliminating the arborist requirement so that we can rely on CAL FIRE's determination. The permit generally, at least from staff's perspective, is a pretty fair and balanced permit that's really necessary to aggressively deal with a very big problem. So the chief can certainly talk a little bit more about it. If you have any questions about the conditions themselves, we'd be glad to answer them. But that's what you're looking at today.
Thank you. Okay, so did you want to comment further, and then we'll move to public comment?
Okay, let me just add a couple things. Thank you, President Robinette and directors. Okay, as we know, we need to start putting some trees on the ground. We have a grant currently available, a PG&E grant that expires October 30th. That grant money is earmarked for taking out dead trees on the Fiscalini property primarily, but can be used on other properties as well if we don't approve this permit. So if we don't approve this permit, that money will now be used somewhere else in the county because it expires on October 30th. Once we activate this grant, we have 12 months. It's valid for 12 months. As you can see in the fiscal part of the staff report, there is no cost for this permit from the county. And if we have to apply for a regular coastal development permit, we hope that we'll be able to offset. We feel pretty confident that we'll be able to offset that with future grants as they come available. We do have several grants that we have in application period right now for Cambria. 2 of them are greenhouse gas grants, and 1 of them is a Western States grant. And with me today, and I'll conclude, with me today is Forester Alan Peters, who can talk specifically about grants and about trees and the necessity to move them. And we also have with us County Planner Arlen Singwald, who worked tirelessly on trying to come up with the language on this particular application. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to have Arlen and Alan speak at this time?
Good afternoon, President Robinette and directors. I'm Arlen Singwald with the Planning Department. All I have to add to what Mr. Carmel and Chief Lewin stated was this is, on your agenda is this emergency permit to remove the hazardous trees on Fiscalini Ranch. And as we discussed last time we were talking about emergency permits here, there is a standard ordinance requirement that Chief Lewin actually alluded to, which is that within 30 days of issuance of the emergency permit, the permittee would have to apply for a regular coastal development permit. And in this situation, whether you know it or not, the district actually could be ahead of the curve on that because the Friends of the Fiscalini Ranch have already submitted a regular coastal development permit that we call a minor use permit for a hazardous fuel reduction and reforestation plan for the Fiscalini Ranch. So I feel pretty confident that we can just consider that existing minor use permit as your regular follow-up permit for this hazardous tree removal.
That's great.
So,
Thank you.
And I'm available for questions, but that's all I had to add.
Thank you. And Alan, were you going to comment today?
Alan Peters, Unit Forester. I'm happy to answer questions. I don't really have anything additional that I think needs to be added at this point, but I'm happy to provide any clarification. As Chief said, the main concern of ours now is just the time issue with the grant funding we have, and also with the personnel resources that we hope to use to do the actual tree cutting. We're going to try to use firefighters that are available now that will go away when fall gets here. So we're trying to utilize resources from numerous other agencies and use this as a training opportunity and a way to get a lot of work done for very little funding.
Okay, thank you. And Chief Lewin?
I just want to add one thing, particularly for people that are listening, and is that this permit does not help the person on the individual home lot. Those folks, this permit is only for CCSD-owned property. That said, we're about to have a letter from the county planning director, James Bergman, that will be inserted into this month's water bill, which will allow anyone who has a dead tree on their property that is a fire threat, that is in the defensible space area, to remove that tree without getting a permit from the county, as long as they follow the rules, and there's no cost associated with that. So good news on two fronts here. We have this, also have this ability for the folks up here to take down their trees easily.
Thank you. I'm going to go to public comment and then come back to that.
Good point.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. And public comment, we have Tina Dickinson.
Tina Dickinson, I'll make this brief. I fully support the emergency permit, the grant. Now, I don't see any dollar amounts here, Chief. Where's the grant? How much is it for? I thought there was a grant. He was talking about a grant.
You address me. And
yes, can you answer the question then?
Why don't you continue with your
I
public
need
comment?
to know that he was talking about a grant.
We'll come back to it.
Where's the dollar amount?
We'll come back to it.
Okay, I fully support this. I also fully support residents being able to, we've gone on months and months, way too long, to be able to take down a tree that is dead without having to pay for the permit. I fully support that as well. But I'd like to know what the grant amount is. How can you talk about it if you don't know what it is? Thank you.
Thank you. Chief Lewin, would you come back and talk about the grant amount? Or Alan?
The grant, as Chief said, is from PG&E to the County Fire Safe Council, SLO County Community Fire Safe Council. They've decided, because of the issues in Cambria, they've decided to allocate really an undetermined amount of this grant to Cambria. So they've prioritized the work in Cambria as number one. And so therefore, the exact dollar amount is unknown because it remains to be seen how much time we have to utilize the funding and how much the work costs. So it depends on how for example, how much work we can do with our crews at no cost to the grant versus how much arborist time is needed. So there's still a lot of unknowns. Therefore, we hope to use the balance of the grant countywide and prioritize money towards Cambria as needed, as depending on the details that we're discussing right at the moment.
Okay, thank you very much. We have another request for public comment on 3C, Mary Webb.
And Madam President, we also have Carlos here, and I think he has some in-kind service funds that he'd like to discuss also with the board and from the 3C. So at some point, if it's okay with you,
okay, well,
he can
if
come
he's
up.
here to comment, Mary, is that okay with you?
Thank you, Madam President.
All right, our facility supervisor, resources supervisor.
A ranch manager as well. Yes, as Jerry mentioned, the California Conservation Corps has agreed to provide us with 3,500 hours of service for this project. And that's been signed. They're just waiting for the approval. They will be doing a lot of the chipping, limbing work that will need to be done once these trees come down. So we're going to utilize CAL FIRE, 3Cs, firefighters, and whatever district staff we have.
Thank you. It's sounding like this is covered, for sure. Thank you. Time's up, Carlos. Okay, next on public comment, Mary Webb.
Mary Webb, I'm chair of the Land Use Committee for the North Coast Advisory Council, but I'm just going to speak as a citizen because I don't have permission of the NCAC to speak, apparently. This just came up. I've never seen this permit before. we're actually analyzing other projects, and I'm very confused. I'm actually completely confused now because I've had discussions over the last several weeks and months about these permits. I was just under the impression recently that the MUP that the Land Use Committee is working on right now is not for these trees. So I don't really understand county's suggestion right now that this emergency permit for 300 trees can somehow become a coastal development permit under a minor use permit that the Fiscalini Ranch has already applied to us when it doesn't have any number of trees specified on it. And from what I understand, the MUP that the Fiscalini Ranch is working on right now has got to be for 600 or some trees of all different sizes. So the numbers of trees aren't right. I have concerns and questions now about what permit is attached to what other permit. The emergency permit that we have been discussing in past several meetings was for about 194 absolutely dead trees that would be confirmed by CAL FIRE as being dead. This permit is talking about dead or dying. So now we have new or dying language in there. And anyway, those are my concerns and my questions. I'd like to have more information about what, I just, this is very loose, unfortunately, because we are in an emergency. We're in the perfect storm. And to have this stuff being just hanging out like that, I feel like I'm in Hurricane Katrina sitting on a rooftop with a sign saying, "Save me." And it ain't happening. And I don't think it's going to happen this way. This stuff really needs to be more clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, then I think we are ready for board discussion on this. Director Barrender?
Yes. First of all, Erilyn, this letter that went out with our bill, utility bill today is excellent. I think that the county has done a fantastic job, and the one I'm referring to is the one that allows our individual homeowners to be able to have a tree that's been tagged by CAL FIRE, not having to go to the county, not having to pay a fee, and that's not what we're talking about right now is this emergency permit. But people should know that, the county has worked very hard on getting something that's usable for our citizens, and I want to thank you for that. That was excellent. I also see that the particular emergency permit for the streamlined permitting of removal of hazardous trees in Cambria on parcels owned by Cambria Community Services District is a very nice accommodation. I think it's very good. I've read it. I like it, and I definitely will support it.
Thank you. And Vice President Cliff?
Yeah, I wanted to make a brief explanation. I'd been asked before. On the previous permit that related to individual trees on private property, we were being asked to indemnify the county on that as issuers of permits, and I objected to that. Here you again see that we're being asked to indemnify the county, but remember, this is our request for our purposes on our property, and that's a legal right of the county to say, we'll give you the permit and you're responsible for what happens on your property and hold us harmless. So it's a totally different situation than the arguments previously, even though it's the exact same wordage. It's just that it applies to a different thing than the other. So I don't have any objection with this permit for our own purposes.
Okay, any further comment, Dr. Yes, I know, promoting everybody today. Director Thompson?
I am totally in support of, and we should move forward.
Okay, and Director Rice? I know. Okay, all right, do we have a motion then?
I would move that that the board accept the emergency permit streamlined permitting for removal of hazardous trees in Cambria on parcels owned by the Cambria Community Services District.
I'll second.
Second, it's been moved and seconded. Let's have a roll call vote, please. Well, I'll ask for further discussion. Any further discussion? All right, Roll call vote, please.
Director Thompson?
Aye.
Director Berenger?
Aye.
Director Rice?
Aye.
Vice President Cliff?
Aye.
President Robinette?
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. And that concludes our meeting today.
Future
Director
agenda?
Rice had requested we talk about agenda.
I just had a quick, I'd like to try and get this on. I received in the mail a Prop 218 notice from the Mission Country, and I would like to have this be put on the agenda because I think it's supposed to come to us before it goes to the customers. And I got this as a customer, so I think that it's not appropriate to be done that way. And I was speaking with our district council, and we do need to be bringing this back. So I'm sure that it will be brought back with all deliberate speed, since clearly they need money for their organics program. Yes.
And although this isn't actually on the agenda, and we don't actually have a space that allows us to take any action, as you know, we're aware of it, and we'll be writing an appropriate letter and taking it back to the board.
Okay.
Okay, without further ado, meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.